think there's a Gordian knot, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot and trying to spread and get people to talk about. The Gordian knot tying all these problems together, war, economic disequilibrium, racism, all of it. The Gordian knot is money. And we have a political system that's organized around acquiring money. It's that simple. And consequently, the rights of money are always privileged over the rights of people. And if you read Hackman and Pearson's book, Winner Take All Politics, one's a young chaired economist from Princeton, one's a young chaired economist from Berkeley. And they did a study to find out why the economic divide was growing so wide. And they were extremely exhaustive about it. They looked at education, they looked at computers, they looked at globalism, they looked at race, they looked at everything until the light went off and they realized that the 0.1% funds both parties. So in a certain way, you can think about the Congress as a wholly owned subsidiary of great American wealth. And so not to have this under discussion puts all of our political ideas like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Just imagine how America might be if we had full federal funding of elections. We, the taxpayers, gave every candidate the same amount of money. And you prohibited corporations from spending their treasure to affect public policy for their shareholders. And you prohibited lobbyists from giving money, as is done in many European systems. So even the television is making its money off keeping elections as a year in, year out issue and struggle and who's winning and who's falling around. But they're never talking about the money. They're never talking about the guy you shook hands with is taking money from the same sector as the guy you're fighting. The Koch brothers, the Rensselaers, the Coors brothers, George Soros. Some of them are good guys, some of them are not, but it's the same wealth that dictates every term, every piece of legislation, everything in America, and yet it's taboo to talk about it. So in Europe, in France, where I've lived a lot, the election season is 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Every candidate for the money comes on every station in France. They talk, people listen to them, they vote, and it's fucking over. You don't have Steve Kornacki whacked out of his skull on Red Bull trying to make you think that a vote count is a horse race. They're just counting votes. But this is the way to increase the viewership of the news, which has exactly the same business model as Facebook. Mm-hmm. They sell your attention to advertisers. And because they're selling your attention, they've perfected ways of grabbing your attention. They put every story in the most emotional, the most combative, the most sentimental, the most heart-rending manner imaginable. And we sit there and we watch it, and their bonuses depend on it. Their income depends on it. The amount they can charge for advertising rates depend on it. And nobody ever talks about it. Nobody ever talks that in Britain, public television is paid for by a tax on radios and TVs. It never goes through Congress. Our PBS goes through Congress. And all it takes is one senator with a hair up his ass to cut the budget if you say something they don't like. So I call this rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. So the reason we have no leverage, the reason why Senator Manchin, who is a bagman for mining, petroleum, and union interests in West Virginia, can completely block the president's agenda, is because of money and because of his need to keep his campaign up and to fight off interlopers. So I keep relating, I turn the pyramid upside down, and I keep relating all political issues to this common source. Obama made 40% of his campaign from small donations. I adored President Obama, best president of my lifetime. I'm 80 years old. 60% of his money came from the people that should have gone to jail in 2008. for criminal Ponzi schemes, the credit default swaps that broke the economy, the world economy. President Clinton, Democrats and Republicans, since Ronald Reagan, have been betraying working people. Here's the simplest example. In 1970, wages were frozen. At that time, the minimum wage had a buying power of $10 to $12 an hour. 1970, $10 to $12 an hour. By keeping it frozen for 30 years, inflation cut that wage by 30%. So the $7.15 wage is the product of Congress doing nothing, neither Democrats or Republicans, and they all knew it. It was an invisible gift to the corporate sector. They cut the wages of every working person in the United States. So you wonder why people are outraged when Jimmy Carter's Fed chair, Paul Volcker, raised interest rates 5 points in a single day. They bankrupted hundreds of thousands of family farmers who would listen to Earl Butt, Secretary of Agriculture, who told farmers, get big or get out. Bankrupted them. They're now working as serfs for big agro industry. They lost their family farm. They lost their heritage of their relatives and all their heirs. For every 5 farms they lost, a business collapsed in the Midwest. The leading cause of death on the family farm was suicide. Bill Clinton cut the budget of rural mental health. I mean, back and forth. Ronald Reagan busted the unions, fired 11,000 air traffic controllers, attacked the National Labor Relations Board. Everybody talks about him like he's a saint. He was the head of my union, the Screen Actors Union, and he was a snitch for the FBI, turning in labor organizers. So there's this whole secret history which winds up with all these people in the Capitol who've been sitting around. They've got the opioid epidemic. They've got the crystal meth epidemic. GATT and NAFTA shipped their jobs overseas, and the United States spent less money retraining our workers than any industrial country. And you wonder why they're angry. Because they look at the news every day. There's cheerful men and women with good hair, good suits, dealing with irony and the who's going to win the horse race, and their lives are going into the toilet. So to me, the only thing I look at is, instead of the 200 emails I get every day asking for money, like my $100 is going to really fight the hedge funds, the derivative traders, the finance, the insurance and real estate lobbies. Who are we kidding? And yet this is a taboo that is completely blocked from public discourse. Sorry, but you triggered me.